What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand new episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I'm Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope everyone's doing well.
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we're just two guys that like to talk over the biggest stories in gaming, and we always like to start off with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what have you been playing?
So, I've just been playing two things right now. Actually, I'm trying to clear out my docket instead of playing 100 things at once. So, still playing Star Wars Squadrons, and I'm enjoying it. It gets very, very samey, which kind of sucks. Because once you find like the ship you want to fly and the style you want to fly, it's kind of it. It is interesting where you can like change like something like you can move your energy to like focus on your shields or focus on your speed or and your like actual firepower and stuff. So that's kind of cool. But like the story is just kind of there, and it is an interesting story, but it's something that I wouldn't recommend someone have to go out and buy this game for. So it's a little sucks there, and then like there's so many like so little like modes, and I was like, well, they're gonna put in other modes and stuff. There's no reason they shouldn't. And of course they announced, I think it was yesterday or the day before, they're like, no, the game is as it is. No more modes are coming, no events, new ships or styles or maps. And so it's a little weird that they just kind of just dropped it. They already said like the team who made the game is already on the next project. So it's like kind of, I'm like, alright. Because I'm like, I haven't beat the story because there's only so much of just kind of playing first person in a cockpit that's like exciting. So once that phases out, it's a little bit weird. But I go back to it every once in a while. The other game I've been playing, which I've been really enjoying, and I don't think I told you I even got this. So I did end up getting Crash Bandicoot 4.
Oh, I was wondering if you were.
And this game is so good. Oh my goodness, super good. I know you and I were very weary on it because $60 for a Crash game in 2020. It's kind of a steep asking, but Toys for Bob, I gotta give them a round of applause because this game feels like the most natural sequel to Naughty Dog's original trilogy. And they did there's two main things that really help put into the more modern perspective, because the game is still challenging. It's not like an easy walkthrough. You're not going to just blast every level one death, but there's two main things that I find good. So there's a retro play and a modern play. Obviously retro play is super to the original trilogy where a certain amount of lives and checkpoints and stuff like that. They do have a retro play which doesn't change the difficulty of the level, to my understanding. A modern play that doesn't change the difficulty, to my understanding. But instead of like a heads, it has just the death counter. So it's just gonna count how many times you die during the stage instead of you lose your 3 lives, you gotta start the whole stage over. So
Gotcha. You
can kind of just really keep trying and learn it, and you'll start from that checkpoint the newest checkpoint you hit every time. So it makes learning the game way easier, a lot less frustrating because you don't have to worry about doing the whole level again. Super nice. Also, they add they call it advanced shadow. So when Crash is above boxes, it'll highlight your shadow like in a circle so you know where you're going to land. So none of this kind of guessing, sliding off the edge,
that's interesting.
Which you're familiar. For purists, you can turn it off. It's an option mode. So it's there if you need it. I put it on because these levels are new and stuff like that. So it's there. So the game is definitely playable. It's also really filled with content. No, as of right now, microtransactions. To get the suits, you gotta play the game and hit all the boxes, find the secret gem, stuff like that. I'm still early on where I'm just playing as Crash, and you can switch to Coco at any time, which I usually do because I don't know.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So it is what it is. So I like to do that. I haven't gotten to where you play as Cortex yet, or Dingodile, or Crash's old girlfriend Tanya, or whatever. I think it's Tanya. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but really cool, filled with content. It just got a nice little, they call it flashback mechanic, where you find a secret tape, which unlocks another level. Actually, that it's supposed to be a flashback to when actually Crash was a test subject for Dr. Cortex. So it's pretty cool to see that, where it was, and they're really just not mini games, but like mini challenges where it's like a level straight boxes. But it's cool to see that kind of experience, because we've never played, to my knowledge, Crash actually being, the test subject from his experiments. So, super good, super full of content. I'm really excited. I'm okay with the purchase. I did use coupons and stuff to bring it down because I was nervous about spending $60. So luckily I got coupons and all these other stuff that brought the price down, but I can definitely suggest this game. It's really good. So what have you been playing?
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear Crash is really good too. And the funny thing is, before I say what I've been playing, I did actually watch a couple like high resolution videos of Star Wars Squadrons just to see if I could if I can handle the video. I'm like, well, maybe I can handle the game. Nope, I'll tell you, cannot. I was churning just from a gameplay.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, there goes that. So yeah, I'm probably gonna look into Crash once I finish what I'm playing right now. What I've been playing right now is Control. I'm fairly deep into it right now. I've been playing a lot of it, and yeah, man, I gotta say I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm really, really impressed with what they've done. I've bumped into pretty much the same issues everybody else is. It's just performance, a lot of drop frames. It's having trouble running. The menus don't, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said already. It makes me that more excited that when my Series X comes, I'm probably gonna pop that in on there. Just to see if there's any performance differences, which I can almost guarantee there will be. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. What I didn't know about it was the fact that it's so much of a Metroidvania. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of awesome exploration that you can do and backtracking and collectibles and stuff like that. So I'm really enjoying it. There's lots of quality of life improvements that they have with the menus and different things that I don't really use, but it's cool that they have there all these different settings that, like, if the game is too difficult for you, you could play around with. So I think that's really cool. There's a lot of accessibility options and stuff like that. Game is beautiful. Story is hard to follow, but in like a good way. And the best way I could describe it is, nobody really I heard say this either, is there's a lot of Kojima in it. Yeah, the aesthetics of it are very unique, and it's very cinematic, and I love that. But in terms of the way the characters communicate with one another and all the anagrams like OOPs and I forget the AWEs and all these different terms, very Kojima-like. And they use all this different jargon, and there's floating people using all these crazy powers, and it's a kind of blend between military and supernatural. So I didn't realize how Kojima-like it was. And yeah, man, I really enjoy the game, and it's probably going to be something that I return to in the future just to see those performance differences, because again, that's like the one major critique I have of it, is just how poorly it runs. And you could tell that it's just one of those things that would just be better optimized for a next gen console. It's just pushing the hardware a little bit too far. And but other than that, yeah, I love everything about it. And I'm hoping I have a lot more left to it, because I'm not sure how far I am in it, but I'm really deep, and a lot of the plot elements have kind of been addressed at this point. So I'm like kind of worried. I'm like, I hope it doesn't end soon, because I'm actually having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I don't remember, because it's been a while. I played that back in January of this year.
Yeah.
So I don't remember how long it took me. I want to say it was like. Well, I ended up getting like sidetracked with a lot of the side missions and stuff like that, because sometimes you don't really know when you're doing a side mission. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, because that game is so weird.
Yeah, very.
Because it starts off very normal. Like, hey, I gotta find my brother who was with this company in this building, and then it's not a spoiler. Immediately you're like, oh, you're the boss. You're the new, what do they call you? Not the commander, the
director.
The director. Yeah, and you're like, you're the director, and all the paintings are you, and I'm like, what? But I'm glad you're enjoying it, because it is such a weird game, but it is really solid, especially the combat. Once you get the flying ability.
Yeah, just I got that yesterday, and I've
played the game changes. It changes.
Yeah, it's really awesome. So, and it makes me excited to actually jump into all like the DLC content, because now I get it, like with the connections. Specifically like with Alan Wake and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, I see what you guys are doing here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Everyone was like really I'm like, if you guys played it, you see it from the get-go, like it's really connected to that universe.
Yeah, fairly early on I was like, I know exactly what they're doing here. So it's pretty apparent. So it makes me confused as to why there was any debate at any point, because I'm like, oh no, this is definitely the Alan Wake universe you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess, that's everything I've been playing. So I guess we can jump into the first major story. And this was one that I saw a lot of headlines about during the week. And so we finally get some clarity so we can break the story down for you guys. And it's all about the Xbox overheating, or at least running hot, and that rumor surrounding that. So this past week, we've started to get some reports that people with early Xbox Series X units have noticed that their consoles are running pretty hot, most notably on the giant Bombcast. Responding to a question on Twitter, though, Xbox Games Marketing General Manager Aaron Greenberg said that the temperature isn't significantly different than the Series X exhaust compared to the Series 1X. It's so hard with these names. He added that he hadn't experienced significant heat with the console he has at home either. Now, this was a very interesting story, obviously, because they emphasized so much about how air circulation is going to work with this. I mean, it has this giant monolith fan structure to it, like a PC tower, and it filters everything into this giant fan upwards. So it running hot ran as a surprise to a lot of people, because if there was one thing we thought that this machine was not going to do, it's going to run hot. But it seems like, according from Aaron Greenberg at Xbox, that this is not going to be a major thing that differentiates it from the One X. So I guess, at least for now, maybe they just had early builds of the console and stuff like that. Because from what I saw on the Giant Bombcast is he pulled out that little Seagate drive on the back, and apparently it was uncomfortably hot and that his console gets really, really warm. But again, it's an early build. It could not have been optimized for what they were doing quite yet. And then when people get retail units, it'll be like, the full air circulation that we'll come to expect from the Series X. So did you see this story floating around?
Yeah, so I saw it when it was like trending, and then I was like, well, I only know 2 influencers that I follow consistently that I know who have it, so I went and saw it. Kind of funny, they did post something about it. Yep. And then Alana Pierce, who was formerly IGN, I know she had one too, so, and then who I guess she now does the Xbox podcast for Kind of Funny or whatever.
Yeah, she's on
it. So I checked her out, and they're like, yeah, it runs, they're like, the wording's very weird, because they were pretty much honest. They're like, well, it runs warm but not hot. Like, some people were like super over exaggerating that it was like changing the temperature in your bedrooms and stuff like that. And I'm like, guys, come on. I mean, some of the strongest PCs aren't going to change your temperature in your room. I didn't believe it, essentially, because they really built the system for that. Like, that top half is to really let all the air out. I'm not sure if people are what they're expecting. And then when I saw Aaron Greenberg, like, no, it runs as hot as the Xbox One. I'm not one of those guys that, once I'm done playing for hours, I go and touch my systems. I've never touched my PlayStation 4 Pro, or even my PlayStation 4 Pro when I was playing The Last of Us and that thing was revving like crazy. At no point did I want to go touch it. I don't know. And obviously I've touched it like to put a wire in or move something, and it's been warm. And it's been, warm. Never hot to the touch, hot where I had to put a fan on. So I saw people really just I was surprised on how many people were kind of just jumping on the story, especially the people who didn't have Xbox Series. Most of the people who had them were like, yeah, I mean, it runs hot, but it's a very strong console. Like, they're like, have you guys seen PCs? My PC gets distinctively hot when I'm playing certain games. The hottest I've ever got, I think, is when I was playing Hellblade on PC.
Yeah, it's very demanding.
It was very demanding. It was, the fans were running. I'm like, I don't know what people were expecting with this kind of power. Obviously, it may run a little warmer than your current gen, I guess, but to the point where it's like, I guess people are just really scared sometimes with Microsoft, the whole Red Ring series, situation that happened with the 360 launch. I guess people were kind of just looking or hoping there's a big flop for Xbox. Overheating is obviously something they knew from the get-go to avoid. You don't want to launch systems like that. So I don't think it's anything to worry about. Most people who have it are saying that it's not really anything to worry about. So I'm okay with keeping an eye on it, keeping my ear to the ground. Obviously, we're still 5 weeks away from launch. If there is a heating issue, it's going to come to fruition pretty quickly, especially once some of these deadlines start opening up and all these NDAs and all that kind of stuff start hitting their lines. If there is a heating problem, we're going to know. These guys are not going to just let Xbox sell a bunch of these systems with heating problems. Yeah. I don't think it's anything to be too up in arms about right now.
Yeah, Cyberpunk will let us know fairly fast whether there's a heat issue with this console. And yeah, people were pretty overzealous with this story. I think a lot of this is very obviously apprehensiveness left over from the 360 era. I think people, when you start saying Xbox and heat, people start freaking out just because of all the Red Ring issues, obviously, with the overheating and the adhesive and stuff like that. And that since has been remedied, obviously, since then. But people obviously are like a little bit apprehensive still about that concept. So the moment someone says like, hey, it's running a little warm, people are pretty freaked out, because I guess if the way they're thinking is like, hey, if it's running warm now playing backwards compatible games, imagine when we start running like current gen and next gen games. Like, that's probably where the fears come from. But as of right now, they said that it's not an issue. This has been a couple people's isolated experience with a couple early builds. So it's something to keep your eye out on. But as of right now, I don't think there's any real cause for concern.
Yeah, and we'll, again, like I said, we'll hear soon if there is a problem.
Definitely.
Okay. So, nice little story. PlayStation is really, drip drabbing us information. So finally, we have some backwards compatibility details from PlayStation themselves. So PlayStation has given us a lot of new information regarding backwards compatibility on the PS5. They've always reiterated that 99% of PS4 games will be playable on day one. We didn't really know what that meant on what it was, but luckily they finally decided to open up. So PS4 titles are obviously getting to be running better on PS5 through backwards compatibility, even the games that don't have necessarily a next-gen upgrade. So obviously, loading scenes and all that kind of stuff will be running better. Like you said earlier, I'm excited to try out. I have Control on PlayStation because I got it on sale. So I'm excited to hopefully play that on my PS5 just to run better. If I can pause and unpause and then not get motion sickness, I'll be fine with that.
Yeah, that's that weird jitter thing it does.
Yeah, super, super weird. Obviously improving more stable frame rates and things like that. Unlocking frame rates, dynamic resolution up to 4K. And additionally, PS4 games will also take advantage of some of PS5's new UX features. VR games are compatible. They did release a list, which is way, way smaller than I thought, of the, 1% of the games that don't work. And so you have Afro Samurai 2, Revenge of Kuma, Volume 1, which is a delisted Afro Samurai game. You can't even buy that game anymore. The other volumes were canceled. I forgot this game even existed. I thought this was a PS3 game. You have Just Deal With It, which I think is a card game you play with your phone. Shadow Complex Remastered, which is there's only 2 games on that surprised me on here. Robinson the Journey, which is a PSVR game. We Sing, Joe's Diner, Hitman Go Definitive Edition, and DWVR. I forgot how you're supposed to pronounce it, but super, super small list of games that most I never heard of, and I don't think anyone's crying over.
No.
I mean, Hitman Go is an iPhone game, if you guys really want to play that. But, so what do you think of this? We're finally getting some backwards compatibility information. I'm surprised they kept the secret so long, because this is some of the stuff that Xbox has been really pushing, where they're like, hey, you're going to play backwards compatibility, but your games are going to also play better naturally.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good thing.
Yeah, obviously. And are you torn up about any of these games not being compatible?
I really did have a strong penchant to play Joe's Diner on my PS5. I wanted to see it with that 120, frames per second. But obviously, no one's playing these games. So I did wonder though, for the few, the small developers who are responsible for these games, who have developed these games, I'm really curious to know what the small development related issues are where they can't get it running on the next gen console. I'm just a curiosity on my part. What is wrong with these games that they don't run when they were able to get thousands of other games running? That's interesting. None of these games, I'm obviously thirsting to go play. The backwards compatibility kind of suite and offerings that the PlayStation 5 is offering is pretty much the form that I was hoping it was going to take, which is basically just handle it how Xbox did. So be able to play last-gen games with small boosts here and there, and depending on the level of optimization, at the low end, you get a little bit of a resolution boost. On the higher end, you get performance boosts, and it seems like they're going to be handling this very, very well. I saw some people getting on them. It's wow, Sony still can't do, proper backwards compatibility. And I'm like, a list of 10 games is not, saying a bad approach to backwards compatibility. And I guess it's because comparing to Xbox, PlayStation released a list of games that won't work on their next console. Where on the other hand, Xbox releases a list of every game that does work. Yeah. But if you compare them, there's actually probably going to be way more games that play on the PS5 than backwards compatible necessarily with Xbox. They just have a different approach to the marketing of it. When you went onto the Xbox One thing, they didn't release a list of all the 360 games that didn't work. No, they released a list of a smaller list of the 360 games that do work. So it's kind of just changing the way that I guess you look at it. But no, this is really, really good. As long as you get all the major first-party and third-party stuff working, I'm happy. That's all I want, is just make sure all your stuff works and all the major stuff that I'd want to go back to works. So obviously you want the Assassin's Creeds, you want all these annualized franchise games working. But I mean, a couple indie games here and there and small things that specifically has been some time before they come out, I'm not mad at. If these were one of the more, new games that came out this year or something like that, okay, that might be an issue.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, or if it was a first party thing, that would be an issue. But I mean, a Shadow Complex remaster, like, I like Shadow Complex, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'll get over it. Yeah, so I like that. I do like their approach, and that's one thing people kept ignoring. They're like, well, Xbox, not every 360 game is compatible with an Xbox One. Here, practically every PS4 game I have, I don't think I own any of these, obviously. Every PS4 game I have will play on my PS5. Even better, which is exciting because, I still like to jump into Tony Hawk, and I'm glad that I didn't mess up and not get it on Xbox or whatever. And we were so worried about what that 1% is. Now that we know what that 1% is, it's really not even a story. I'm in the same boat where I'm like, what about these games make it that they don't work? Where I just don't know what I wonder what the criteria was where they're like, yeah, this just doesn't work. But that whole thing where Xbox is marketing, thousands of games available at launch, including your Xbox One games, Sony has that now too. It's like 4,000 PS4 games. They're like, they work day one, tentatively, on PS5. So we're starting to, the scales are starting to balance here now because people, I guess, were assuming, is it going to be just first party stuff and not downloadable titles? So it's exciting to know that games I'm not done with playing, I will be able to hopefully just get into it on my PS5 and keep playing them. And also it makes it easy that once these systems come, because of how huge they are, I can pack up my PS4 and my Xbox One or put them on a shelf, make them look nice, and I don't need them there to play one or two games that I'm still playing. So overall, really good news. Finally getting some good news from Sony. They're taking their time, but at least it's positive stuff.
Yeah, at this point, it's mostly just kind of the UI that we're waiting for, I think, at this point.
Yeah, because even those, I think we talked about it last week, the people who, the Japanese influencers that have it, I guess their PS5s override the UI, so like the games play automatic, which is like a really weird thing, but
the things they choose to be secretive about, I'll never quite understand.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're holding out for like one last, I always call them directs, but one last like video shoot, like launch shoot to show everything. So hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, hopefully October. I mean, you guys are really playing it close to the chest if you're going to show the UI off for the first time the same month that you're launching the console.
Yeah, I'm assuming, and I guess they're trying to keep bad. If it's not that they just some reason don't want to show it yet, or they're trying to do one big push, I'm thinking it may just be very, very similar to the PS4 UI and
not much to show off.
Yeah, not much to show off. Or because even Xbox's was very similar to their current one, but they're like
cleaned up, streamlined.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, that would be okay. Just get it out of the way now.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking at the date right now. Yeah, it's October 11th today. We're a month out. Almost exactly.
Oh my goodness, almost exactly. We're 4 weeks
out.
Yeah,
because the 10th and the 12th. So.
Yeah, we don't have the UI, and we saw the system get deconstructed, but no UI. I'm like, I would have preferred to see the UI instead of them unscrewing all the circuit boards and stuff. But
look at that heat sink though. What a large boy.
It's so big.
All right, so I guess we could jump into the next story, and this was definitely a big controversy this week. I saw people losing it online, so
yeah,
lots to unpack here. So File 5 Games has announced that apart from the content that has already been submitted, there will be no more production on Indivisible following the controversy surrounding developer Lab Zero Games. File 5 Games released a statement that clarifies this unfortunate decision, revealing that there will be no guest characters or backer-created characters added to the game, even though they were previously promised. And there was actually a really, really awesome list of like different characters from different indie games and stuff like that. The troubles surrounding Lab Zero Games were brought public earlier this year as multiple employees resigned following inappropriate behavior and abuse from studio head Mike Z. Zymont. So, yeah, there was a lot of controversy about specifically this guy and all the trouble he was causing. And then it seems like there's going to actually be kind of a ripple-down effect from what 505 Games is going to be releasing on behalf of Lab Zero Games, which is really, really rough. Now, I love Indivisible, but this is not a game that I had continued playing after beating it. But it's a real shame that this is not going to be able to happen. Not to mention, all these characters being added in would definitely have been something to get me back into the game. So the fact that like the main character like Guacamelee and Shovel Knight and stuff like that won't be in it is really sucks, and it really sucks for all the people who, very actively play this game, and maybe all the developers who put a lot of work into it. So had you heard about this story?
So I had heard a while, because it was a few months ago that I heard about the Mike Z story about him abusing. I'm not gonna get into the details of abusing some of the people at the studio and stuff like that, and making them very uncomfortable. So I knew that was kind of in the works of kind of getting at him and stuff like that. I'm surprised it went to this extent where they're like, well, that's it, we're gonna drop it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of rough, because this game was backer created, to my understanding, and I don't know if it was specifically Kickstarter, but they had their goals and things like that. So it's interesting to be, and very sucky. And I'm sure they didn't want to do this. They're like, hey, listen, we know we promised you this. You may have donated for this specific reason and for this character and all this promised content that we were working on, but we have to scrap it all. That's it. It's done. Whatever's in process, whatever's already submitted. I think they said there's going to be one more patch, I think, by the end of the month. And they're like, that's kind of it. And that sucks. This is such a bad thing. It's such a horrible thing, not for everyone, because obviously they, Indivisible, I haven't completely played yet. I remember playing the beta a long time ago, and I jumped into it because I think it's on Game Pass.
It is.
Yeah, it is, right? All right, so I did play a good chunk of it, so I'm just surprised. I mean, it's terrible because people's passions are on the line. All that stuff that was on the line and people were really excited to do is now scrapped, and this is obviously going to keep going forward for the stuff that's not been announced and anything else that Mike Z has already had hands on. And so it is a terrible story, and it sucks that one guy, and I'm sure there might be other people that really just messed this up for everyone in a sense. So I did hear about it, and my thoughts out to the 505 and everyone else, the developers and people who weren't being idiots, people who weren't being jerks about this whole thing and just was trying to make a fun game. It sucks that this is where they have to leave it now.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of confusion specifically about what's happening, why did 505 make this call? And when you understand IP ownership, it starts to make a little bit more sense. So from what I understand is after the whole controversy happened, a lot of his studio resigned, and IP ownership immediately resorted to him. So he owns the likeness of Indivisible and I believe this is also the developer who made Skullgirls, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Correct, that's correct.
And so from what I understand, the rest of the devs left, and they're making their own team to continue making all those products. So we're definitely going to see art from these guys, but it seems like unfortunately this IP is just going to be locked up with this one guy, who really did screw up everything about this. So it's a really unfortunate, weird situation where, if you understand IP ownership and who owns what, and now the fact that he doesn't have his entire development team for him, releasing supplementary content for this is not really an option, as even if they wanted to. Besides the bad PR and stuff like that, there's just, the manpower is no longer there. So yeah, it's a really, really unfortunate, weird situation that I'm sure is going to evolve more. I'm sure there's going to be lawsuits. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of weird things happening related to this. It's just a shame that it kind of has to surround such a brilliant project like Indivisible. So,
yeah, unfortunately. I wonder what other IPs. So Skullgirls never got a true sequel. They've always added on to it.
Yeah.
There's always been sort of mumblings that they're going to do some sort of sequel. I don't know what that looks like now. Does he own that IP? So now they have to make a spiritual successor or whatever to that, and it's this is a very messy situation that I'm sure nobody wanted to do, and no one wanted to be in this kind of situation. No,
not at all. And it's just crazy to see the kind of actions of one person affect so many people. It's so unfortunate.
Yeah, it's terrible. Absolutely terrible. All right, so next story, PS5 Cross Saves support is up to the developers. Now, this has been a while now that there's been very big confusion on the whole Sony cross-gen save support, that your save won't cross over to your PS5 version, especially the games that give you free PS5 versions. And so Sony's, again, finally came out to clarify via the blog post that the cross-save from PS4 to PS5 is up to developers to ensure the feature is supported. The quote is as follows. Please note that the ability to transfer game saves between a PS4 version and a PS5 version of the same game is a developer decision and will vary title by title for cross-generational games. Sony has also confirmed that players will also be able to transfer their saves between consoles using a LAN connection, Wi-Fi, or the cloud save, which you get with your PlayStation Plus membership. It's clear that there is some hurdle when transferring saves that requires work on the developer side, as evidenced by the recent games Yakuza Like a Dragon and Dirt 5 both coming out very clear saying that it does not support the cross save. So it was really weird to see this going on because for a while, again, we've been hearing, especially, again, Yakuza and Dirt being like, yeah, you guys will have to restart your game again on that version. We can't transfer the saves. And everyone assumed that was just PS5 straight up doing it, because then there was an issue with the Spider-Man. They said, no, it won't cross over, and then Insomniac came out saying, yeah, it crosses over. I don't know what everyone else is talking about. I wonder what hurdle... Sony's always had this weird issue technology-wise where it's like, hey, you guys have to go in there and do this extra effort to make your game saves transfer over. I wonder how big of a hurdle that really is, and how much work, because sometimes these teams are limited staffed and working on multiple projects, and have it be for them have to get a group of people and be like, hey, work it so that we can transfer saves, and it's a weird situation. I'm surprised how many people are still hung up on this. If you really like the game, and I understand putting all your work away, just replay it. There's certain games where I'm been wanting to replay, and if I can't move my save over to PS5, it's fine. I'll just replay the game. But I do understand for some of these other games. So Yakuza's the big one. Dirt 5, again, it's a racing game. Yakuza, these are games that you put in hours and hours and hours, very much like a Persona and stuff like that, where some people really sink in 30, 40 hours, and I understand the upset where it's like, well, now I want to get the new system, but now I can't transfer my 40 hours. I'm not replaying a game for 40 hours. So, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, Sony's approach to cross saves didn't surprise me at all. And I kind of connected to the whole cross-play situation where it's like they seem willing to set up the tech, but they're not willing to do the heavy lifting on it. And I'm not going to say one way or another that they should. I understand there's complications. I'm not a developer. I don't necessarily understand the tech, but Sony definitely has that kind of stance that's like, listen, we're going to give you the ability to do these things, but whether or not it's going to work on your game is up to you, and you do the work and you figure it out. And I'm sure there's resources internally that they can help you with that process, but it's very clear that they're not going to mandate this or anything like that, where they're like, hey, if you want to be on the PlayStation 5, your saves need to cross over. They're not willing to go through all that because it's just kind of needlessly excommunicating certain publishers that I'm sure they don't want to have problems with. So it's like, yes, and then sometimes you could chalk it up to not having the manpower for it. Some people you could chalk it up to probably just lack of willingness and lack of not really thinking that it's worth the effort to have cross save as a possible thing. I think it should become an industry standard in this kind of era going forward, where consoles are becoming more and more PC centric, which means that there's going to be marginal increases of power, but everything kind of works everywhere, especially in the Xbox ecosystem, where you could play it on the Xbox One X or the One S or the Series X or the Series S, and you could just play it at different scalable levels. I think it's important that when you have a game that can jump from console to console, that I think it's important that you have all the data surrounding that game be able to be as malleable and move around the same way. So I think going forward, this has to become industry standard. I think on this generation, the people who don't allow cross save is probably going to be fewer, or the minority, if anything. I expect all the first-party developers, at least on Sony's side, to be supporting this in some capacity, especially if they have games that from last generation that people are going to be playing going forward. And the first thing I think of is like God of War, for example. When God of War comes out next year sometime, unless it gets booted to 2022, a lot of people are going to be booting up the first one to refamiliarize themselves with that game. And so to think, like, there's definitely going to be some kind of cross-save there, too. Not to mention, obviously, we saw cloud saving being so common this generation that it's not really a complicated thing. So I don't necessarily understand why some people are like, we're not supporting cross saves. I don't know, but it doesn't surprise me at all that Sony's not like really sticking their head out really and mandating that people do it. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, again, it's such a mixed bag where it's like, is it more like the vocal minority that's up in arms about it, so upset about it? I get, Yakuza comes out, not for us. I want to say it comes out in the winter, right? It's not even this year. Yakuza comes out for us.
Like a Dragon, I'm pretty sure is this year. Let me check.
Yeah, or I may be confusing with like the PS5 version that comes out in March.
So okay, yeah, the PS5 version is set to launch in March.
Okay, that's what I'm confusing it. So,
but we're getting the regular current gen version on November 10th, so it's going to launch with the Xbox.
Oh, so okay, so I see that. I kind of see the issue with that one because again, just because I know how much. I mean, I haven't gotten too into the Yakuza games. I know you can speak a little bit more to that. I understand these are like some bigger time sinks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I see the upsetness. I mean, is it that much work? Unless you're gonna sell your hardware. Well, no, you can't because it comes out 3 days before the system. Just keep your PS4 hooked up for a little bit. It's
yeah.
not the craziest situation. So I get it. You know, just don't start it on your PS4. Can you wait 3 days and get it on your PS5 and you just play it backwards compatible that way? You know, there's way more easy solutions than just not. I guess it's more for the people who upgrade later to.
Yeah, I think
the
of
PS5
stuff like
and stuff
Dark
like
Souls
that,
are going to cause an issue. Witcher, people who like put like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into games that are not like server based.
Yeah, that's I get it, but it's like you have other options that won't make it that difficult. Your PS4 is not going to just not work November 12th. It's not what's going to happen. So, like, if I was in the middle of something, I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. I can't bring it over. But is it really? It's to the point where I need to freak out? I don't think so. But again, we'll see who really takes advantage of this and how difficult it really is. Is it really just limited to a small handful of games?
Yeah, I mean, hey,
developer.
If it means that much to you, I guess just play on Xbox. Everything's going to kind of work across that ecosystem. It's pretty much the same hardware, just stronger. So,
yeah, I mean, Yakuza's not exclusive anymore. So
yeah, so play it on Xbox if you want, or if you're really intent on playing on PlayStation 5, wait till March. If you don't really care that much, you have from now November till March to get it done. So there's a couple different options available for you. I know Yakuzas are really long. Persona was a good example. Like, even if you just mainline the story, it's going to take you 25 conservatively.
Yeah.
Like, very conservatively.
That's very
realistically, if you get into that world and into the side quests and stuff like that, easy 60 to 90 hours. Very easy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, yeah, again, we'll have to see which games are most affected.
Yeah, hopefully this is a very limited edition, issue, and or maybe even something that's limited but timed, so they'll figure it out eventually. And by the midpoint of the generation, you don't see anybody having this problem. So things can change.
Yeah, all those Dirt 5 people are really gonna
Dirt 5
hurt the sales of the PS5.
All right, so I guess we could jump into the last story, and this is about Microsoft reportedly bringing xCloud to iOS in 2021 via a direct browser-based solution. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of controversy and a lot of issues between the Apple Store and cuts and compatibility with different services, specifically cloud services that don't have a monetization strategy that syncs up with what Apple likes to be able to take their cut in terms of taking cuts from every individual purchase. So it was a whole long controversy, and Xbox is just one of the many people being affected by this. So Microsoft is reportedly working on a direct browser-based solution that will allow it to bring its cloud gaming service, previously known as Project xCloud, to iOS and iPad OS devices in 2021, according to Business Insider and The Verge. Now, this is reported. This is not a direct statement from Xbox as of right now, so that's important, worth noting. Phil Spencer allegedly revealed the news during a recent internal all-hands meeting. He stated, "We absolutely will end up on iOS. We'll end up on iPhones, iPads with Game Pass," which doesn't surprise me. I knew they were going to figure out a way somehow, because obviously iOS is not some small ecosystem. And I don't know specifically the market capital percentages of who owns more than what, but I mean, it's at least 50-50 in terms of the people on Androids versus Apple. So you don't want to just have one of those player bases. I knew they were going to figure out something some way. And I mean, listen, Apple's in the courts right now fighting with, Epic, about their splits right now and the way they deal with all these services. So they're already having their hands full with stuff. It wasn't going to. I knew Microsoft was going to find some way to figure it. So browser based is very interesting. It looks like they're probably just, I guess, going to bypass the App Store in its entirety. Browser based is not what I anticipated them going towards, but we'll see how it ends up. I just thought it was worth noting that, hey, Microsoft's looking for a way to get it on your device some way.
Yeah, my only thing, so I'm out. I have an iPhone currently, and it sucks that I can't be using xCloud because it's part of my Ultimate Game Pass and stuff like that, and I would love to use it right now. I think I've talked about it before in the quote unquote beta test of it. So I have run. We were limited just to Halo Master Chief Collection.
Okay.
But it ran great, so it works. Obviously, that wasn't browser based. You had to do a lot. You had to download a lot of stuff to even get to it.
The iOS version was a little bit more complex from what I understand.
Yeah, you had to download. First, you had to get an invitation, download Test Flight, which then gave you a streaming app, which looked like a little cartwheel, and then so we never even technically had Game Pass.
Okay.
There was no Game Pass app, so it works. So and then obviously the way Apple was like, oh, you gotta submit every game. I'm like, oh man, I think it'll be too late. Because I'm already considering, and I'm like 90% chosen that I'm going to switch to an Android device for my phone so I can, amongst other things, but also so I can play my, games. It'll be crazy that once I get my Series X and I won't be able to stream certain games to my phone because I happen to have an Apple phone, and I just already feel that this whole browser-based thing is not going to work well because you're already streaming. On top of that, now you need to stream on top of having the browser open, which is constant connection. So that's double constant connections. So I just don't see how well that works. I could be surprised. Who knows? But I think they just say generically 2021. I'm very impatient when it comes to that. When the fact that I know right now I could be streaming some of my games to my phone while I'm not home and all this other stuff. I think unless this comes out very soon, 2021, which knowing Apple, it's not going to be very soon. We don't even have Fortnite anymore on mobile, so it's just. I knew this was obviously, like you said, iPhones are such a big community, iPads, all that kind of stuff. So obviously there's going to be a solution. I just don't know if the solution is going to work to the way they want. On top of that, Apple can also just come through and just put another wrench in the socket, just really screw this up. Because I know, again, browser-based kind of overrides them. And are they going to start getting upset? And what does that look like? Apple's just so weird sometimes, and they just aren't always the most consumer friendly. I mean, these are the people who took away a headphone jack. So it's just, you got to really, really watch out for them.
Yeah, I think it's ultimately going to be one of those things where it's like they might find a solution to make this run to some capacity. It might not run the best, but it's probably eventually going to be one of those things that kind of like the PC market. Like, hey, if you're a gamer, then yeah, you're probably not going to get a Mac. If you like modular PCs and playing around with a bunch of stuff, Mac is probably not for you. So it's probably going to be the same thing with the phones. That's like, listen, if you want a lot of cloud phone-based gaming and stuff like that, it doesn't look like the iPhone's going to be for you. You probably just go with Android. But there's lots of different reasons to get the iPad. It's lots of different reasons to get the iPhone or the iMac. So it's kind of just going to go down to preference. I think the phone space is kind of just going to end up morphing into what the PC space is, which is depending on what you're using the device for will kind of dictate what device you go towards.
Yeah, and again, it's just... Well, I guess it's almost like that wait and see. It's like, well, Microsoft wants to do it, but who knows how long it's going to take.
Yeah, Apple's very obviously in like a moment of flux on their ecosystem right now in terms of like their app store and the way they're going to monetize things going forward. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like a coin flip as to like who's going to prevail. Like, is Apple going to be able to make everybody bend the knee, or is everybody going to find a way to bypass Apple? I don't know. I can't predict that. These are all massive companies with crazy lawyers and billions of money going, dollars going into this, that like,
for sure, yeah.
There's no way I could even predict what direction things go weird. I'm sure they're going to just have some way to play around with the splits that, is financially beneficial for all parties involved. I don't think anybody's ultimately going to get up on anybody and burn anybody in the process. Because again, these companies are too big. This is not some tiny little mom and pop shop versus Nintendo, like those kind of things. Like these are the titans fighting right now. So all we can kind of really do is stand back and wait and hope for all the Apple users that they come to some conclusion that will be able to, offer you guys these great services on your devices.
Yeah, sounds great. Hopefully.
So I guess we can jump into a loose topic that I'm actually really, really excited about. And basically, we're just going to be talking about our favorite year in video games. So basically, we're going to choose a year. What were the great games that came out that year? Were there any notable console releases or major events that happened that year? And then we'll have like a couple of notable mentions of other years that we thought are also worth consideration. So, Steve, what is your favorite year in gaming?
All right, hold on. Gotta get my notepad out because this was a fun one because it was such a trip down memory lane. So I have two main favorite ones, and I'm just trying to really decide. So even though it's way sooner than, obviously we love our retro stuff, and don't worry, I have a notable mention for a year, which almost knocked out one of these for my favorite. But I have to give, and it's such a weird one because it's not that long ago, but actually it was already a decade ago. So 2010.
Yep, I got you.
Is that a mention for you? Or?
Yes, it's a notable mention.
All right, because I don't feel bad taking it. So, excellent. 2010. I did not realize how packed this was. So, at this point, I'm a junior, I want to say, in high school. So, it's such a weird attempt to think. But this is the year that gave us a lot of sequels in a sense, but they were the revolutionary sequels. So, the ones that people remember the most. So, obviously, we got Mass Effect, I think, back in 2007. But 2010, we got Mass Effect 2, which most people hold to be the best Mass Effect so far, except those Andromeda fans. But but this is the year that gave us, Mass Effect 2, Red Dead Redemption, Fallout New Vegas, which again is held as like the best Fallout to this day. Call of Duty Black Ops, now that's a personal one for me because that's the best Call of Duty in my opinion. Mario Galaxy 2, Halo Reach, which Halo Reach again, is like my favorite. Halo, obviously, also the last one we got from Bungie. This is also when I started appreciating indie games because Limbo was out and I like really connected to Limbo, so I was super excited for that. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which is held as one of the best Assassin's Creed games, even though 2 is kind of itching in there, but this is also when we started getting them every year. Battlefield Bad Company 2, which Bad Company is the Battlefield everyone keeps asking EA to go back to. Obviously, it's not going to happen at this point, so RIP. God of War 3 came out, Alan Wake, Heavy Rain, Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii, Castlevania Lord of Shadows, and also my last one I have on there was Sonic All-Stars Racing, because you guys know me. I don't even have to get into that one. So when I was looking into the years, I was really trying to see like what was coming out, what was a constant hitter, because we've grown to almost be accustomed to multiple good games and then like 3 really big games. Like in 2018, like the 3 games were God of War, Spider-Man, and Detroit. I want to say it was it Detroit?
I think so.
Yeah, those were like those big staples that like people were, Sony was really pushing. Xbox unfortunately didn't really have anything, but I wanted to see what year was a consistent, just really great games. And in 2010, I was finally really to be in the ecosystem. I want to say I worked all summer to get a PlayStation 3 at the time, and I was able to really experience some of these games. So I obviously, after catching up, Mass Effect 2 was my first experience into Mass Effect. I never had played 1. I didn't have a system to play 1, obviously, a PC or a 360. And Mass Effect 2 was the only Mass Effect on PlayStation 3 anyway. So it was really exciting to see these different worlds and see what gaming had become. Because for a long time, I was playing on PS2 games. I was playing ports on PS2, so I was playing whatever Call of Duty was coming out on PS2, which was not the best stuff. But to see like games really step it up in every single aspect, to see games who were coming out and really just changing it up. To this day, these games are still being talked about. Red Dead Redemption, Fallout New Vegas, Black Ops and Halo Reach are always being held up as some of the best shooters, the best storytelling, the best games in general, to the point that they were getting Xbox One X updates when they were coming out on Xbox, when you were playing the old Red Dead and stuff like that.
Peace Walker? Birth by Sleep? Skate 3? Like, 2010 is crazy.
Yeah, that's right. Birth by Sleep, which is pretty much my favorite Kingdom Hearts game, I want to say, besides 2,
Easily for me, yeah.
So it's just, there's an insane amount. I didn't have enough paper space to write how many games came out in 2010, because that's not even including, like, the mobile stuff that was coming out.
Oh, yeah, that's all console stuff, yeah.
The PSP, the PSP was, I want to say this was, like, the real final year for PSP, and they were coming out.
Yeah, it's the latter years, because the Vita came out, 2012?
Something like that, 2012, 2013. So, like you were saying, Peace Walker and Birth by Sleep, which was Peace Walker I'm a little less on, but Birth by Sleep was fantastic. That was a console experience game. Like, you were getting true artworks, true games that were like still stick to me. Like, some of these games, I mean, look at Mario Galaxy 2. People are still up in arms that we can't play Mario Galaxy 2 right now. That's a decade-old game. Now, obviously, Nintendo's just being jerks about that, but
yeah, they're unique.
Alan Wake is on the verge of making a comeback. I haven't played the DLC for Control, but that's such a game that's still being brought up because it's so good. It's so, like, I don't want to say perfect, but people just connect. Like, these games just bring me back and connect me to a time where it's like I was playing these games not only for fun, but for story, for characters, for experience.
Yeah, Mafia 2 I think came out that year too.
I want to say Mafia. Yeah,
2010. Let me check. Because I'm pretty...
I missed it, but it could be.
Mafia 2... Yeah, 2010, August 23rd.
Look at that. Look at that.
Tremendous.
Again, there's, like I said, there's too many games to have on the list.
Tremendous.
So, that's one of my favorite years in video games, because even though there was no console release... Actually, I think the PS3 Slim, which is like the best model, may have come out at that time, but...
The Slim, not the Grill, right?
No, not that. That one's dumb.
Okay,
not the slidey one.
The slidey,
not the slidey.
You're the only one who I know who ever got that.
Yeah, I kept. Well, yeah. I did that because it was
the red grill.
The red grill, which all the dust got in the slots.
Yeah.
So, but I want to say, yeah, not the super slim. But they did the nice slim one, which is the one I got.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
Remember, I had to go to, like, Sam's Club or something because nobody had it.
That one's a beautiful one. I still want one of those.
Yeah, I still want to get one of those because I have my piano one. I want to track one of those down.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorite years. I had to place it down, and I had another one which was, like, again, I had a 90s one, and I had another one that was, like, really close. Before I go into notable mentions, though, I want to hear one of your favorite years.
Yeah, we can alternate.
Yeah, we'll do an alternate.
So my favorite year I chose, and it's probably going to come to a surprise to specifically you, because again, I play so many games from the 80s and early 90s. But I was kind of running through all the different years that in my head immediately came up to me, like, what was a really good year for me? And then I ran through it, and my favorite year in gaming has to be 2001. Now, wow. I'm going to read off some of the games that came out this year, and you're going to understand immediately why I think it's one of the best years in gaming. So, GTA 3, Halo, Melee, Jak and Daxter, Sonic Adventure 2, Metal Gear Solid 2, Final Fantasy X, SSX Tricky, DMC, Twisted Metal Black, Onimusha, Advance Wars, RuneScape, Paper Mario, Pokemon Crystal, Luigi's Mansion, the Game Boy Advance is launched, the GameCube releases, and the Xbox releases. So can you tell me that 2001 is not one of the best gaming years ever?
I didn't really... Again, this was a hard one, this subject. But my goodness, all that... I did not realize that was all...
And I double-checked it because I was like, there is no way. And I looked for every single one. I was like, wait, what? And I looked. Wait, what? And I looked. Yeah, it's insane. Like, 2001 is insane because it was one of those periods where just everything was happening at the same time. Where Nintendo they were launching their multi-pillar strategy with the whole, like, handheld working with the main console. The GameCube was coming out. PlayStation had already, I'm pretty sure, launched the PS2 by that point. But yeah, Xbox was jumping into the fray, so they came out with Halo and stuff like that. Melee was killing, like, it's insane. So, like, I was going back and I was like, this is easily, I couldn't find a year that was even close to this one. And then there's other ones that I really liked. But yeah, 2001 is absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, things were getting revolutionized at the same time, at that time. Because, like you said, Xbox and GameCube, they came out, with automatically 4 control, slots. And PlayStation, you had to go get a multi-tap and stuff like that. Xbox had a hard drive in there. You didn't need a memory card. GameCube, you did. But, things were changing. That wasn't a thing. Memory cards, just knowing your games are going to be saved. Getting discs for games. It's just such a good year. I did not know all that was in the same year.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
I would, if I would have noticed, that probably would have been my year. I would have been like, yeah.
Yeah, I was reading this and I was like, this is definitely Steve's year. I was like, I shouldn't take it, but I was like, but I don't know if he knows. This is such a low-key year that a lot of people don't realize all this happened.
Which is crazy because I got my Xbox for Christmas that year. So so I was there. I got that for Christmas. My brothers, one got a PS2 and one got a GameCube, and I was always like so excited because at the time I think all three of us shared one room, so we had all three systems in one room. So we had one guy playing Spiral, one guy playing, I don't know, SOCOM or something weird, and I'm over here playing Halo and Big Mother Truckers. So it's just, what a year. What a time.
Yeah, because you basically one of the few times in history where you had 4 people pumping out major games. Because obviously PlayStation was already in the PS2 era. They launched in 2000. Xbox had just fresh come out, so they're trying to establish themselves, so they come out with Halo. Nintendo's an established franchise. N64 was kind of a rocky place, so they're like, we need to get our stuff together. So obviously, like, Paper Mario is there too, so they're doing their N64 thing, but they had games like Melee, which to this day is one of the best, I don't know if you want to call it, arcade fighters of all time. Mm-hmm. And don't forget, in 2001, at that point, Sega was still holding on for dear life. So the Dreamcast was still doing its thing. It obviously didn't end up the best for them. But yeah, that you still had Sonic Adventure doing their thing. So like everybody was firing on all cylinders and trying to make their mark. And it was like a weird time for everybody where like PlayStation was still reaffirming like, hey, we killed it last generation. We could do it again. Plus they were seeing insane support because of the DVD drive. They were the first one to have the DVD. So, like, it was just an insane time in history where everybody was either coming off a low or a crazy high and trying to dominate this generation. And because of that attempt to dominate this generation, we had just some of the best games from first-party releases probably ever to this day.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. 2001, man. Wow. Wow.
Tell me about it.
It really caught me off guard there. So I'll go into my notable mentions. So one, just to roll the clock back a little bit, 2007 was which I understand that the Xbox 360 technically launched in like 2005. I never even saw it or really heard about it till about this time, only because of the games that were attached to it. So 2007 is the year that gave us BioShock, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. So that's the Call of Duty that started this whole thing. Halo 3, Crysis, Portal. That's when the first Mass Effect came out. This is when Sony came out with Uncharted. So the last time we saw Naughty Dog was Jak and Daxter 3 or Jak Combat Racing. I don't remember which. It must have been Combat Racing. So this is the first time they really stepped up and changed their game up to Uncharted. Guitar Hero 3, Metroid Prime 3, God of War 2, Skate, and the Witcher series started in this. And Mario Galaxy. I don't know if I skipped that.
Oh, that's our era right there.
So this is the era where we were really... I always say really cognitive. So at this point, I was freshman in high school, so I knew what was going on. I was able to see videos online of these games and wishing. I want to say my brother got a 360, I want to say sometime that year. So I was able to really, this was the first time I was buying 360 games, even though I didn't have a 360, just because I knew I could go across the street and play it at his house. So that's a big one for me. The other one, I had to roll the clock back to a little bit, even though it's the year I was born, so I wasn't there, so I couldn't really push it for like it's one of my favorite years. But 1993.
Okay.
So this is Doom, Mortal Kombat 2, Secret of Mana, Day of the Tentacle, Star Fox, Mega Man X, which is, I mean, come on, it's Mega Man, guy. Mega Man X is one of my favorite games of all time. This is when Super Mario All-Stars launched, and that's the version I got to play. Mostly Link's Awakening DX, which is was the first version of Link's Awakening I played. Yeah, Sonic too. CD, Zombies Ate My Neighbor, Shinobi 3 was 93 as well. Even if you get into licensing stuff, this is when we were getting the Aladdin games. This is when we were getting DuckTales 2, Shining Forces 2, ActRaiser, Phantasy Star 4, NBA Jam was 1993 as well. Splatterhouse, Gunstar Heroes, Jurassic Park, and you got some other stuff because it was weird because we also got Mega Man 6 the same year as Mega Man X. So I just think it was such a constant like connection of like really good games that people still play to this day. Like how many people bring? I mean, Star Fox may not be the game I play constantly, but it is cool to know that that was all the same year. Now, obviously, I was not even a year. I was not playing these games for whatever reason, but I never realized that some of these games that really are staples in gaming history were from '93, and it's like, man, if I was alive, for some of these games I wasn't even alive for, what a year would have been to just constantly have all this stuff. Like the Battletoads Double Dragon crossover was that year as well. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out, not just because I was born in that year, but 1993 was pretty dope. So what other notable mentions do you have?
Yeah, so one of them was obviously 2010, and you killed it on that one. So yeah, I had all the same things listed. I want to go super far back to 1988 now. And now this one doesn't have the biggest quantity, but the names themselves are just beyond classic. So I got 4 for you here. So obviously Super Mario Bros. 3, one of the best games of all time. Mega Man 2, one of my favorite Mega Mans. Ninja Gaiden came out that year, and also Super Contra came out that year. So yeah, 88 is crazy. Obviously, it was the point where Nintendo had saved the game industry from that game crash, and I felt like the NES really started getting its traction around this time. Obviously, the Black Label stuff are absolute classics from 86, 87, but I feel like 88 to 91, 92 is where the NES was absolutely murdering it, and really people were extracting the full power out of the machine and stuff like that. So yeah, 88, one of my favorite personal years in gaming. The next one, funnily enough, is actually the year I was born, which is 1994. In 1994, we got Donkey Kong Country, we got Doom 2, which is my favorite Doom game. We have Earthworm Jim, Super Metroid, Earthbound, Final Fantasy VI, Sonic 3, System Shock, and Tekken.
Ooh, I don't know. Tekken. Sonic 3 and Tekken was the same year, because those are obviously those are two franchises I still play, consecutively. Right? Like I was just playing Tekken 7 the other day, and Sonic obviously rehashed that, but Sonic my 3, goodness. Perfect. It's the only reason I really hook up my Genesis every once in a while. Yeah, so like 94 is a great year for media in general. Like the music scene in 94 was really, really good, and movies, there was a lot of great 94 movies. And so yeah, I mean, gaming was just absolutely murdering it. And again, it's just, there's something to be said about when a console is released and has a little bit of time to get its legs going. And at this point, we had fully transitioned into the 16-bit era, and it was just on the cusp. But it had existed, but just on the cusp of going into the 3D era. So, and obviously, again, I have a lot of love for the 3D era, but those like 97 to 2000 games are a little clunky at times. A little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is kind of like the tail end of like that 16-bit era where the Genesis is going full steam ahead, the Super Nintendo are full steam ahead, and we're just getting tremendous games that to this day resonate really, really well, because again, these games age really well, where a lot of the PlayStation 1 and 64 games are really hard with the controls and camera and stuff like that, and some of the visual stylings. So we got games here that not only have brilliant visuals, great gameplay, but really, really great soundtracks too, because the sound chips on these 16-bit consoles are incredible too. So yeah, so 94, in terms of one of the years that I play the most stuff from, it's probably around from here.
Yeah, same as me. Like, these are the stuff that, because I was always like hand-me-down stuff, so I was always like the older gen, so it's great to think. It's like, yeah, that was the stuff I was rocking back then.
Yeah, and it's funny.
That's the stuff that really hooked me.
If you look at the names of the major games from 94, most of these franchises are still very active. Like Donkey Kong, I mean, Tropical Freeze wasn't too long ago. Doom, obviously, Eternal, killed it. Super Metroid, we're still waiting for, but that's coming back. Final Fantasy 16 just got announced. Final Fantasy 6 was back then. Yeah. Sonic, it ain't going nowhere. System Shock, obviously, is the spiritual predecessor to BioShock.
Yep.
Which, I mean, inspires God knows how many games nowadays.
And I think there's a System Shock reboot or
remaster or something coming
out, and a sequel. I want to say there's like a System Shock 3 or 4.
Super underrated game. A lot of people don't really, because again, it's one of those. It was during the era where there was a hard line between PC centric experiences and console experiences. And so back then, like if you weren't in this PC space, yeah, you didn't know what System Shock was going on. But in retrospect, going forward, things are so melded up now where it's like a lot of experiences that you're getting only on the PC right now. There's a lot of console equivalents to it. So
yeah, absolutely.
And then obviously Tekken. I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were my games. 2001, 1988, 1994, and 2010 were my years.
Yeah. So I had 2010, 93, and 07 were my mentions.
And I'm curious to see going forward into the future, way into the future, if we ever do this topic again, if there's any like more super contemporary years that will break in. Because like 2017, 2018 were pretty crazy too.
They were. It's nuts to think we were getting so many good games back then. I feel 2021 we might be.
There's potential.
There's potential. We might be spoiled because of so many things were delayed and pushed and stuff like that. 2020 was a solid year, but I think 2021. I don't know. There's something about it that I kind of got my eye on. New hardware's here and stuff like that.
Because 2017 was Breath of the Wild, right? Yeah, Breath of the Wild. I think Mario Odyssey launched that year too.
Odyssey launched at the fall, I want to say.
Yeah, very late.
The Switch launched. That was the Switch. That was Nintendo's comeback.
Yeah,
so.
Horizon was there.
Horizon, yep. So 2017 was a strong one too. And 2018, obviously, like I was saying, had some of these, gen-defying games. And I'm sure we're probably missing. It's just also it's hard because like from 2012 to like 2015, there was a lot of just like trash being sent out as well. So it's like weird. But also we got the PS4, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Well, first off, I'm sure there's someone out there having an absolute meltdown. It's like, what are you talking about? It's 76. Have you seen Pong? Like, yeah, I know, buddy.
Yeah. Don't worry. I mean, you can put an argument for every year. Like the other one, what's the other one I wrote down? Like 09 was an interesting year. That's Batman Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, 09 was a really good time.
Uncharted 2, Assassin's Creed 2. Ooh. The only thing, it was very sequelitis in a sense.
Oh yeah.
Resident Evil 5, Halo 3 ODST, Infamous.
That's a shooter era.
Yeah, big shooter era. Also, 2009 was the release of Minecraft, which I think is like the best-selling game ever.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
So it's, there you can make an argument there, but again, that one was just like so many sequels, so it's like improving on the stuff that like broke the industry. Yeah,
if there's one conclusion we could garner from all this is to have a best year, it's not something that can be done by any one single publisher. This is something that everybody kind of has to be on deck for, and everybody has to be killing it, which again, that's why it makes me so excited for 2021, where there'll be fresh hardware out there. Nintendo has these kind of staggered releases, so they're well into the Switch life now. So now we're probably going to get a lot of the more ambitious Switch games going forward in terms of what can actually be done on that hardware, pushing it to its very limits. Where the PlayStation 5 already has a crazy lineup. We're going to get Horizon 2, we're going to get God of War 2, and then finally Microsoft's in a position where not only do they have really, really great hardware, and there's not that discrepancy where they're running things at a way, lower resolution, like they had the problem with the One X, but they're going to be in a position where they have great hardware and they have all these teams they own. So, yeah, we're going to get stuff from Obsidian, Bethesda, the Coalition. There's tons of different teams that they have available to them. So we'll have a firm possibility that we'll have firm competition from all three of the major publishers. That puts us in a great position. Oh, sorry, 4, Atari VCS. But my mistake. I won't do that again. But yeah, man, that was the loose topic, a great topic, and I'm excited. I'm going to try to build off of topics like this because I think these are really, really fun.
Yeah, because they're good discussions. So I'm definitely going to start looking into topics like this as well. I'll send you a list.
Beautiful. We can use the Steve list. Some of our best loose topics come from your list.
Yeah, I'm going to make those. Yeah, for those listening, I send beefy lists of topics to Jabril. I'm like, here.
Yeah, like the first, I think 10 episodes, 10, 15 episodes were like all your topics. So.
Yeah. Good discussions.
All right. So that was the NeoVintage podcast, episode 26. We'll be back next Monday with a brand new episode for you guys. And we're going to be trying to play around and get more visual stuff to make it a little bit more engaging for you guys. So keep your eyes out peeled for that. And till next time, this is Jabril, and I'm with
Steve. Hope you guys take care.
And that was the NeoVintage podcast. See you guys.